So, Chad, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk about your new film that's coming out November 21st, and it's called Pig Killer. Before we get started, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I mean, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to meet you, and I'm excited to chat about it.
Yeah, actually, I got to see one of your films at a film festival in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. I'm in the middle of Wisconsin, hence
Oh,
Ed
sure,
Gein, the musical shirt and that. Yeah, I'm
sure, sure.
I'm from central Wisconsin. That's where I'm at right now. And I remember seeing The Chair a number of years ago
Oh,
at was making its festival run and found it very disturbing, very dark. But I was a big fan of the folks in your film, and that was a film that stuck with me for a while. And now
wow.
you're coming out with Pig Killer, which I will say was extreme yet a little bit different. But before we dive into it, if you wouldn't mind giving just a brief synopsis in your words a bit about what Pig Killer's about.
Sure. It's based on Robert Willie Picton, who killed 49 women in Canada, Vancouver area, from like I believe 1980 till he
Mhm.
was caught in 2001, I believe, and
Sure.
sentenced in 2006. So it was kind of revolving around 90% of what's in the movie is elements of his life and what actually happened. And, a couple of characters were combined into one, and, certain things were embellished. But, for the most part, this is what the guy did. And, he was definitely colorful. And having grown up in Minnesota on a farm, I could relate to his surroundings and the people that he might have, the white trash folks, the
Yes.
hillbilly, all these kind of different things. So I was kind of like, boy, this is built for me. It was one of the attractions to this that I'm like, I think I can handle this. I mean, I grew up with animals, loved them, and had pigs, and had all these different, had abusive parents, had all these kind of elements that I'm like, I could have been Willie. So this is unnatural.
Good to meet another fellow Midwesterner. I tell you,
Yes.
I think Midwesterners, we come up with the twisted and dark stories because real life tends to be twisted and dark where we live.
Yes. It's those cold winters.
That's what I tell people. People wonder why Wisconsin is the drunkest state in the US. And I'm like, it's because of the winters. And plus, have you seen our politics? I'm like,
Right.
why wouldn't you drink?
You got to.
You got to. Now, this surprised me. I went into it a bit cold, didn't know much about it. I looked up the stuff afterwards about the killer that it was based off of, Willie, and yeah, I was surprised how much real life you kind of worked into the film. What kind of challenge was that to because you obviously want to be a bit respectful to the actual, victims and such, but how what kind of challenge was that to balance that to embellish, include real life things and then just kind of back up, go, well, maybe we won't do this, what kind of challenges did you face with that?
I kind of just go, everything I do cinematically is from the gut and a gut
Mm,
instinct. And, with the writing, I just kind of had carte blanche to go wherever I wanted to, but I still wanted to be kind of true to the stuff that actually happened. So it
sure.
was important for me to not stray too far from that. And a lot of it was so extreme that I couldn't even have probably thought of it on my own anyway. I mean, the dildo gun or the gun with the dildo silencer. I mean, all these things I would have never come up with except that they were actually happened. And it's kind of just made itself in the writing process. I try not to get too hung up on things. If I have a block or something in the story, I'll go back and watch some more
Mhm.
documentary footage on him, or read some more on him, and kind of try to figure out, a line of that's entertaining and keeping still to the true story. And someone will go, "Oh, that never happened," but you got to go have some leeway in that,
Well, yeah.
especially with, to make it entertaining, because it's some dark stuff you're getting into. And for me, first and foremost, a film should have an entertainment value and not be one of those things that, like Serbian film or something that's
Right.
messed up, but you don't necessarily ever want to go back and review it. you know, I wanted to make something that could have repeat viewing and
Sure.
be something that's colorful and entertaining, and
Mhm.
you pick up something even though it's dark, you know, it still should be an entertaining, informative view. Even if you hate the movie, there's still, you could be intrigued by elements of this guy and want to
Mm.
know more about him, and that's, you know, the fun of discovering, you know, a little film like this that has that's based on someone who actually did this stuff, is that you're intrigued by it. You know, America is obsessed with serial killers, so it's one of those things that I tried to kind of go a different direction. Instead of the depressing and whatever and this, have moments of levity and, you know, darkness and grossness, and have all of that kind of in one, without just being kind of afraid to go there, you know, and worrying about, oh well, if they don't like this music, then they're not, you know. I felt good about it. I liked it, and I went with it. And the producers and everyone kind of gave me the freedom to do that.
And you did, and that's what I liked about it. It was a bit surprising because it is a little bit lighter, and people may wonder, wait, dildo silencer, what do you mean lighter? I'm like, first off, I'm gonna say right now,
It's pink.
I haven't dropped my review yet, but spoiler, I loved it.
Oh,
I
good.
got a kick out of this film. What I got more a kick out of is, like, I'm looking at some of the extreme stuff and I'm like, oh, he just put that in there. And then I was reading up, and when I read that the dildo silencer was real,
Right.
I, I was like, really? Yeah. Like, I thought for sure that was just an element you put in, to help with the extreme things that were going on. But
Nope,
you
it's real.
it was real, and that was just like, and then also mind blown. This is Canada. I'm like, this stuff doesn't happen in Canada.
Surprise.
Because I was wondering, like, why has everybody got kind of a Canadian accent? Because again, I went in cold, not
Sure.
really knowing anything, and I'm like, okay, they all kind of sound Canadian, but and then I was like, oh wait, this is in Canada. Wow, okay.
That's great.
Yeah, because I usually like going in cold, just because I like to get kind of that unbiased, just hopefully get what you're going for. And one of the
Sure.
things I dug in this was, and we mentioned a little bit before, is the humor. Because when I saw the movie The Chair,
Sure.
there was far less humor in it. That was far heavier, still great, but heavier subject. And in here, you've got the extreme stuff, but like you mentioned, you worked music into it. How much was that, to where you had to, what was your call for putting in some of the humor? Was it to try to lighten the extreme situation, or what was the process in thinking in that?
I think, you know, for me, it kind of comes naturally. Again,
Mhm.
you know, working, you know, with the gut instinct and on the fly. And when you're working on these limited budgets, I get there, and, you know, there's no storyboards, there's none of that. You kind of have an idea visually what you want. And then the actors rehearse it, and you're like, well, that doesn't work. Let's try something else visually or whatever. And then you're like, oh, that's kind of funny or whatever it is. So you kind of changes what originally may have been written as a very dark thing, but when you actually see it and you're there, and I like to be open up to see whatever works best in the time and space that we have to do it in, and kind of go with that flow. And a lot of stuff, you know, came out a lot funnier than you would have, you know, expected. Not only because of, you know, whether it's a look from Jake or whatever it might be, and or his, you know, uh, way to take on that scene, but it was just kind of also the way he, you know, has chemistry with the other actors, and
Mhm.
the kind of things they can say, and it might just be a look that's funny. And, you know, it was never really overtly funny, but at the same time wanting a little humor, whether it's a line here or a line there, to kind of take you down from the, like I said, the constant darkness of what he's
Mhm.
doing, and just kind of like a roller coaster, you know, the down moment to kind of just catch your breath, and then, you know, have a giggle, and then be grossed out or scared or whatever, and then another laugh, and then, you know, onward and onward and onward.
Yeah, yeah. A particular piece, a particular mask, I will say, I found quite humorous, actually. And that's what I like about horror comedies, is the fact that you well written ones like this one, you find yourself sometimes laughing in spite of yourself.
Right, right.
And I found that myself doing that a couple of times, of going, I shouldn't be laughing at this, but this is the way it just plays out. And you're right, Jake Busey. Oh my lord, I've always been a fan of Jake Busey. I think he's an underrated actor, and he brought it to this character. How did you this in fact, this whole cast, I was so impressed by this whole cast that you had. I'm like,
Well,
how'd you get this cast together?
well, it was one of those things that, again, a lot to do with fate and timing and whatever. Our casting director and producer, Jeff Olin,
Mhm.
he was friends with Gary Busey's wife.
Mhm.
And he recommended Jake and said, "Hey, we should get him the script, and we should, we'll see what happens." And so he got it to Gary's wife. Gary's wife got it to Jake. Jake loved it, and then we set up a meeting. And he was great in person, and it was 100% of the direction I wanted to go.
Mhm.
And everyone else was kind of people who I had worked with before or who I knew, and it was kind of just kind of bringing the band back together and having a good time.
Yeah, I did notice that you had a number of cast members returning that you had in Nightcaller, as well as a few of your other films.
Sure,
And
sure.
I find that a trend in indie film. Is it you find a crew that you work with and you want to work with them again? Is that's what the motivation for that is?
Oh,
Or
completely. Especially,
Mhm.
if they're cool, you want to work with them again because, and
Right.
also they know, the process, so
Mhm.
they're not like, oh my God, we're doing 12 pages today or 50. Some people would be go, that's impossible, it can't be done.
Right.
But these guys are like, oh, we've done it before and more, so they're
Mhm.
kind of into the routine of it and have no problems with it and have a good time doing it. And it's just one of those things. It's also a nice comfort zone,
Mhm.
especially working with Jake for the first time. If I've got like two other actors who I've worked with before, it's kind of an easier thing to not, especially if he were to be a jerk, which luckily he wasn't.
Right.
But sometimes you get there and the guys, where are my green M&Ms or where, whatever, and they're a pain in the butt. And you've got kind of people behind you that have your back in a sense because you've worked with
Mhm.
them before and they whatever. Because it's a limited crew of maybe 10 people, you know,
Mhm.
and it's small, fast, and light, and it kind of goes back to that whole John Ford thing where he had a stock company of people, and I always admired that, and so it was kind of one of those things to shoot for me.
Well, and it's less worry for you because you can kind of put your trust into those people because you've worked with them before, and you can focus on the folks who are newer to the group uh
Right,
as well, right? But yeah,
right.
Jake Busey, I've always like he's got this, and that's what I think adds a little bit to the humor is just his characters, whatever he plays, they're characters that you might not like at first, but he ends up growing on you whether you like it or not. It kind of creeps up on you to
He's like a
quite
fungus.
I wouldn't call him a fungus. No, but almost all his roles, it's like one of those by the end of it, you're like, okay, I know he's a sick serial killer. We've seen the twisted stuff he does, but I'm kind of connected to this guy.
I want to hang out with this guy.
Right.
Let's have a beer.
I, I kind of have a beer to this with this guy to talk to him to find out what makes him tick because he seems approachable. And that's what I think, I think, but that adds to his character because especially when you get into your Wendy Eastman character played fantastically by Kate Patel. Now she's very not a she's fairly new to the indie scene. Everybody else here is in your cast just about are very veteran indie filmmakers who were on bigger projects younger in their career. Now they've done a lot of indie stuff. She's newer. What was it to find her, and what made you decide to go with Kate for your Wendy character?
Well, I mean, she got the movie made. It was kind of her idea. Jeff
Mm.
Olin was friends with her. He brought her to
Mhm.
meet with me. She's like, she was obsessed with this story and with Willie. She grew
Sure.
up in Vancouver and kind of it was, always around during
Mhm.
the trial and all those things. So she knew about it and was, kind of obsessed with it. And she wanted to bring it to life. And we met, she liked me and I liked her. And she kind of pitched the idea of doing it. And then I went off and wrote the script and I said, well, do you have the money? And she went out and got the finance and we were shooting a month later.
That's fantastic. And the thing is, for people who might think, oh, well, that's why she's in the film because she got the money. But she holds her own with this veteran cast, I thought.
Oh yeah, and she had to audition. I mean, that's the other
Mhm.
thing. I wrote it with her in mind, but it was one of those things where at any time the contracts, after years of doing these things, I've gotten good at contracts where I have complete control and I
Mhm.
try to be collaborative, but at the same time, I'm not going to take a dud actor or whatever it is, even if they're putting in money or finding money to, potentially make a crappy movie. So she showed her chops on tape. She was great. And I'm like, okay, you got the role.
Yeah, because I was surprised because I saw introducing, like, okay, usually introducing, they don't have many speaking role. They're not,
Right.
they're there, but the other actors usually have a lot more involved. But she was very involved, and I was very impressed by her performance in here, especially with some of the extreme things that you've got going on. Now, I want to give you mad props as well for practical effects. Thank
Oh,
you.
yes.
Thank you
Of
for
course.
practical effects. Uh, you know, when you're doing a film like this, how much was it weighing of, well, should we do this digitally or should we do this, with practical or,
No, there's no. I mean, I hate digital effects. The only thing I
Mhm.
like them for is kind of cleaning up,
Sure.
or removing wires, or doing,
Mhm.
or maybe a little extra oomph on the practical effects. But almost every film I do is almost 99% practical effects. It's great to see it there live, and it's great to have someone like Joe Castro, who's top of his game, doing this stuff and having as much fun and as excitement showing it and creating it as you do watching it. So I couldn't imagine doing it without him or without practical effects. It's just, there's no better. It's so much fun.
Yeah, because the prosthetics in this looked fantastic, especially little bit of spoiler folks with Ba Ling's character. The I was like, wow, that was real. I mean, it was some of that stuff was really, really well done. And how much of that went into blocking to and lighting and such? Because I know that plays into it when you're doing practical effects to kind
Sure.
of hide the seams, so to speak.
Right,
Uh,
right.
uh,
Well, it's, bilinguals. She went into Joe's shop, got a body mold of herself. So we had basically this one thing that we could cut up and saw. So we get one take on those shots
sure,
that you see. So you set up it as well as you can. Okay, it's in focus. Well, here's the one take, saw into it. And, you do it numerous, saw here, saw there, saw there, saw there. So we had got enough of it with this body before it was completely destroyed. But it was one of those things where it was a one, kind of take thing, because
sure.
budget wise, we made this for under 200,000, shot in 12 days. It's
Wow.
it's one of those things where you get used to um that model,
Right.
and you can't in a way it's very exciting and thrilling, because especially if something doesn't work up, you have to think on the fly of a way to make it work. And to me,
Mhm.
that's kind of the most fun. It's not really about the money or whatever. It's just have enough to get people paid so they're happy, and feed them and get this thing done, cut it and move on to the next one.
Sure.
And because for me, I've given up the dream of being, Stanley Kubrick. I'm fine being an Al Adamson or an Ed Wood kind of cross thing, where you're making stuff on the cheap with people you like to work with, and you do the best you can. And if it finds an audience, great. If not,
Mhm.
you've moved on to two other films, and if one of those finds an audience, hey, great, it makes up for the one that didn't. So that's kind of my new thing of just try to make, one or two movies a year and just have fun doing it and hope that people enjoy it.
And it's important. You're enjoying it, right? I
Yeah,
mean, and there's a market for it nowadays. I mean, with the internet and everything going on, it's not like you had 20 years ago or 25 years ago to where you had to get the distributor because you had to get it on the video shelves. So in front of people, because otherwise, how are they going to discover it unless they're on some underground yes, I'm that old, folks. The news group sites say,
right,
oh
right, right.
man, have you seen this one? Someone's knocking at the door. It's
Those were the days. Those were the days. I miss them.
bootleg,
Give me the video shelves. Give me the video shelves.
well, and mine back here is an actual family video shelf. I
Oh, that's
rescued.
great.
I rescued from the video rental place. Yeah, I got one. My wife said you can have one, so I'm like, okay,
That's
because
great.
they were free, and I'm like, I've got a truck, and she's like,
Oh, wow.
one. Uh, I'm like, oh, okay, okay, you know, I and yeah, I mean the extreme stuff. I mean, I think there's a stigma with horror fans, especially who watch and stuff, and horror filmmakers. who watch extreme cinema similar to the projects you've made. I mean, you over the years you've made a number of very extreme, with extreme scenes in it. And I
Right,
think
right.
we're all some seriously dark, twisted in the basement sacrificing chicken people, but no, we could find enjoyment of it. Would you say there's a bit of a stigma with filmmakers who make maybe extreme content?
I think so. They expect them to be, all messed up or whatever, or speaking a lisp and, whatever. But, it's just normal people who have found whatever, I don't know if, again, it's something that shapes you while you're growing up, whether it be
Mhm.
for me, Twilight Zone and, Alfred Hitchcock Presents and One Step Beyond and all those stuff were just so magical watching them on a little 13-inch black and white TV that, it definitely had an effect. But I'm not sure where the extreme part, maybe growing up on a farm with the extreme, death all around you, seeing it in whatever shapes you in some way, shape, or form. But, I don't know the answer, but I know that on the outside, most of these people who are making this stuff seem as normal as, Willie.
Right? Well, it's a Midwest thing, right? There you go. It's
That's
like,
Midwest
yeah,
thing.
no, I'm perfectly fine. Don't look in the basement though, because here, you want some bacon? But yeah, yeah, and it's one of those things where I think it's because fans of films like Pig Killer, like Nightcaller, like some like that, Serbian film, even to an extent,
Sure.
at the end of the day, people got up and walked home and washed off the blood. You know what I mean? It's not like you're watching this and going, "Oh man, did they really? They really killed that guy. Wow, yeah, all right." And that's what I like about the magic of the films. And your location here, did you shoot it in Canada then,
Ooh,
or?
no. We shot it here in California, in Acton, California, which had a kind of similar topography as
Mhm.
Canada. And the farm we used, Bob Sankey's place, it had really a remarkable resemblance to the actual place with the RVs and the
Yeah,
dilapidated vehicles and all these things that kind of worked perfectly for it. And it was all period correct for, the 90s, 80s. So
right,
it worked out perfectly and much easier than going to Canada and shooting it. Especially again on a limited budget, it was one of those things that you really can't
right.
uh, travel, or there was one moment of thought of maybe someone getting some B-roll of the streets there,
Mm.
whatever. But
Mhm.
that was quickly, it was like, yeah, forget it. We'll just go downtown and shoot it there. And a lot of people haven't noticed or even brought up that, hey, this was in Canada. You know, I should have kept my mouth shut. Yes, it was
Oh,
in Canada.
we
The same
yes,
location as where it happened.
we filmed it on the exact location. Yes, that's
Yes,
exactly where we shot it. We did it at night when the cops were not around. Yes, that's it.
that's it.
Well, I mean, we had that here, in Wisconsin with Ed Gein when it was about. They actually, I don't know if you're familiar with Wisconsin at all, but
Oh,
there's
sure.
a tourist area, Wisconsin Dells, which
Yeah,
is,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
I grew up
Tommy.
in Minnesota, so yeah,
So you
I've been
grew
to
up
both.
okay, so you visited the
Yes,
good land, and yes, enjoyed beer and brats and cheese. I hopefully,
yes, yes, yeah.
yes, absolutely. So Wisconsin Dells, Tommy Bartlett was the big guy back then in the day, especially. He built this robot world, which it was cheesy as, oh my god, it was so cheesy.
Right.
Had the ski. Well, he owned a lot of Wisconsin Dells at first. He's kind
Yeah.
of this big deal for folks who may not know. Well, he wanted to take the actual Ed Gein house, lift it,
Ooh,
and take it to the Dells and make it a horror attraction and do
wow.
like prop, like wax replicas of like the liver in the frying pan, and
Right.
prosthetic casting of the head that hung in his mom's,
Yeah.
and mysteriously the house burned down.
Oh man.
Who would have thought that would have happened?
I mean, that is a genius idea, really. I mean,
It,
it probably would have played great now. Back then, I could guess there probably was someone upset enough to burn it down. But
yeah, let's just say the fire department was very slow in responding to setting fire.
oh, that's a shame.
It was a very sensitive subject, and where I was going with this is how sensitive of a subject with covering this material did you run into problems or trouble or get like hate mail or something for covering something like this, in a horror film?
Yeah, there have been a lot of I won't say a lot. Some reviews kind of pick at that part of how disrespectful it is. If this wasn't a
Mm,
true story, I would have loved it, but I hate it. And I'm like, what the hell? The victims are dead. I mean, to be
yeah,
honest with you and frank, they're gone. Their
mhm,
parents didn't give a crap about them when they were alive because they were on the street selling their bodies and whatnot. And that's another reason the police were so slow to respond. There
sure,
was no one really kind of reporting it because they all thought, well, my daughter's a prostitute. She's disappearing and moving around. And, they kind of gave up on them, unfortunately. I don't, I do have my sympathies for people who have that direction in life that they
right,
take, but I don't use that as give people a crutch for that.
right,
I've had a rough childhood, a rough thing, all this kind of stuff, bad stuff happened. I don't fall back on that. I just move
mhm,
ahead. Don't think about the past, move ahead. And it's kind of
right,
one of those things, these victims, they got in the wrong place, the wrong time, and bad stuff happened. But I try not to, negatively paint them to the
right,
degree where it would be getting the reception that it seems to be from some viewers. But at the same time, there's movies made every day, and whatever it's made on a true story or based on a thing, that there's some violence toward women or whatever it might be, and that's just the way it is. That's the way the life is. There's bad stuff happening, and I just kind of think of, if you don't like it or offended by it, don't watch it. I don't think there's a reason to go out and complain or try to ban
mhm.
it or do all these things or go on IMDb, give it a 1 star. It's just, I don't.
IMDb
If I see a movie,
IMDb reviewer area is such a trash heap. Trust me.
oh, and it's so bought and paid for. I mean, studios, you'll see 110-star reviews with the same, thing, and it's just like, this is so rotten that this used to be a reputable site
Yeah,
you get
yeah,
some great information from, and now it's full of fake reviews and paid for stuff. And but for me, it's kind of one of those things. With any film, if I hate, and I go back to Ed Wood, I look at a lot of his stuff and I see certain things that I admire and I respect, because if you think of the limitations, shooting a film in like 4 days on film with a crew, Bela Lugosi smacked out of his mind. I mean, all these limitations that they're under, it's really pretty phenomenal. So
mm,
I try to kind of give some leeway in all films that I watch to, instead of saying it's the worst film ever made, it does have this and this and this and this going for it. So I try to just not be as close-minded when it comes to things, or hey, it's directed by a pedophile or someone who raped someone 30 years ago. Or I watch the movie for what it is. It's art. I don't want to know
mhm.
about the director. I don't want to know about the star. I don't want to know their demons. If it's a good film or it has good things in it, I can enjoy it.
I've had that discussion with many folks of the separation of artist and art, because you've run into that now where you've got culturally impactful films or
Right.
projects or TV shows or movie series that was made by a not great person, but the
Right.
material worked itself into pop culture so much you got to weigh, artist versus person, supporting
Right.
the art without necessarily giving the person a pass. And that's such a fine line and such a weird balance that we're in nowadays
Right. No, I
with
think it's
that.
crazy to try to, destroy, Roman Polanski's entire career. I love Roman Polanski and I love his films. So no
Sure.
matter what anyone says, well, he did this 50 years ago and whatever, that's not going to detract from my love for The Tenant or,
Mhm.
Rosemary's Baby or whatever it might be. And, I find it just kind of hypocritical for people to, bring out their torches and pitchforks and try to destroy him or Woody Allen all of a sudden out of the blue. It's just crazy for me because these are not fans of cinema. They just kind of appeared magically, and now they're trying to get rid of people. It's crazy to me. If you don't like the stuff, don't watch it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and I'm always been a proponent where if it's something you don't think you're gonna like, don't watch it. I mean, we're running into it now. Uh, yes, folks, I'm drawing a parallel between Pig Killer and the Marvels, but
Right?
the Marvels is a film that many people were online already saying they were gonna hate before
Right.
they went into the film. And
Sure.
then they went to the film and came out and going, man, that was trash. And I'm like, you were going to expect it to be trash before you went into the theater. So, it's just like indie films too. I've been covering indie films for about 12 years now. And yes, the aesthetic is not always appealing to everybody because of limited budget. You had to choose between feeding your crew or getting that extra lighting shot. And you're going to feed your crew because
Right, right, right.
you need them.
Otherwise, they'll kill you.
Right. So it may not have the big screen aesthetic, but at the same time, there's talent in there. There's storytelling. And that's what I appreciate about indie films, and what I've grown to love about them is that you could find the talent in here. And it's just like with Pig Killer, there's so much talent of people who, let's face it, because of Hollywood being the way it is, some of these folks are finding it hard to find work on big projects anymore.
Sure, sure.
So you get very talented folks who still have a lot in the tank
Right, right.
who can't get work just because, well, you're 50.
Right.
Sorry.
No, exactly.
So, I mean, so that's why I loved the cast that you put together, and Michael Perry as Detective Opal. He was great. I
Oh
mean,
yeah, completely. He was great to work with. It's one of those
mhm,
things when you find when you work with your heroes. Sometimes it's like, but on this it was great. People who Bad Moon or whatever.
mhm.
He's just fantastic in, and then you're sitting there directing him, and I'm like, hey, this is great. These moments that you work with the people you admire, and when they turn out that they're cool people and fun to work with, it just is icing on the cake.
And when you're working with veteran actors like the sheer cast that you have here, I mean, you've got everybody in here. Robert Miano, you've got Jennifer, you got Ginger Lynn in here. You got a huge cast. They're all experienced. Does that make it easier to direct, or is it more of a challenge to direct because you might be intimidated?
No, it's definitely easier because
Mhm,
they 9 times out of 10 they got their lines down. They hit their marks. They do all this stuff, and especially you can usually tell if they're going to be cool by their how they enjoyed the script, or if they have these things. So I have a discussion with them before, and everyone was really kind of just 100% on board. Artistically, because they liked the material, and I think the true story aspect was just another
mhm.
level that kind of put them there, because it just changes things, because it goes back to this dildo gun. Oh my god, these things are horrible, but it is a true story.
Yeah.
Oh, they can kind of feel better doing it,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
And you've got so many true crime movies and shows out there that are basically doing something similar, very
Right.
much so, portraying real events. You're just putting a little extra horror spin on it,
Yeah.
with Jake Busey being Jake Busey. I mean, it just was like, okay, I'm in when he shows up. And how'd you get the pig? A little bit opening, folks. Yes, there's pigs in it. It's called Pig Killers. How'd you get the pigs to do what they did in the opening scene? Did you shove corn somewhere, or
Well,
how'd you
I
get?
mean, they kind of, they eat anything, and it's one of those things. We just had, Joe made the body parts and all that stuff, and kind of put the Kiro syrup blood on them, so they had a
Mhm.
sweetness to them. And we threw it in there, and the pigs are running with it and chomping on it. And at one point he was like, "The pig ate one of my hands. He ate the prosthetic hand. Oh my god, he's gonna die." And I'm like, "Joey, the pig's gonna be fine. They eat worse stuff all day long. They're fine."
So no pigs were actually killed in this picture, folks.
No, no animals were harmed in any way.
No.
They were actually they were great little performers. It's
Mhm.
surprising that these were rescue pigs on a little animal sanctuary, and they kind of did anything and everything we wanted without too much coaxing. It was pretty amazing.
That's great. Was there one scene in particular that you had set up? You're like, oh man, this is gonna be hell to shoot. I don't know how we're gonna do this. That you thought was gonna be just really hard and challenging, that ended up just pulling it off like a breeze. Was there any scene like that for you?
Gosh, I don't know. It's funny because I go in with such an open mind
Mhm.
of doing it, because you again, with the limited budget, the time, and the whatever, and first you just kind of like say, let's start with a master shot and see what we get and see how it feels and see how it goes from there. And if it doesn't work, or if it doesn't, you move on to something else, but or you get close-ups or whatever it might be. But it was one of those things where everything kind of just fell into place. I was kind of shocked that it was as easy as it was. And a lot of that, I think, is knowing, whether it's subconsciously, when you write a script and then you see the locations and then you go through
Mhm.
another pass with those locations in mind, or maybe with, once you've cast the actors with them in mind speaking it, and you're able to tweak the script, so you're kind of more attuned to what to expect, and then you get there and it's usually better than what you'd expect, because you've already kind of softened the blow with seeing it and kind of feeling it and knowing who's playing it, and you go with it. And if the actor is game and open to improvisation and whatever, you can really kind of have fun with it and see where it takes you, instead of being so focused on, it's got to be this way, it's got to be that way. And I'm more kind of like, hey, take it as it comes, and if it feels right and it goes and it works, then go with it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Just and then you get that collaboration feel, and then the actors feel like they've contributed and not just following like the script, like the bones of something. And
Yeah.
so, you
And I
get
think that's
more.
again what it makes it an easier, more enjoyable experience, because you're feeling like you're part of it, not waiting around for 12 hours and then you shoot your line and it's like, okay, that's good enough, move on. It's kind of like saying, here, try it your way. Let's see what happens. What'd you come up with? That's, having just kind of a whole, if they got into their character enough, they should be in the mindset of him and able to come up with stuff that, as a writer, you couldn't even match, because they've embodied him, the performance, and they know what they're going to do, and they are free to roll with it and see what they come up with.
Yeah, and then I think it makes for a better visual experience as well, and watching the film, and you can feel that coming across the screen. With it, it just feels more organic with everybody involved.
Right, right.
And I mad props as well for casting Cassandra Gava, who I recognized as the witch from Conan, one of my
Yes.
all-time favorite films, Conan the Barbarian. I was like watching, I'm like
Oh
looking, I'm like, is it no, it oh it
yeah.
is.
No, she was great. And that was her dog, and it added so much. It's again one of those things of, oh, here's my dog. Oh, let's put the dog in the movie. Let's do this. Let's have the thing. It was great, and she was a blast to work with.
well, well, the film just comes together in general. I think it's a lot of fun. In all respects, it was better than I expected it to be for the type of film it was. So, and I'm going to watch it again, absolutely, when it comes out. And again, November 21st, folks, it comes out. And I guess the last question is, you got a favorite horror film in particular?
Um,
Always a hard question.
Zader by Pupi Avati is one of my favorite zombie films. I mean, it's really fantastic. He also did a giallo called House with Laughing Windows. It's fantastic. And it's one of those things, when you find an obscure movie or whatever, that almost nothing's obscure anymore. But back in the day, you'd go to like Jerry's Rerun Video that had the shelves of bootleg tapes and whatnot, and you'd find something, Zader, what the hell's that about? And you'd rent it for $2, and you'd get it home and you'd watch it on your VHS, and you'd be blown away by something when you think you've seen everything,
Hmm.
and you find a whole new subculture of films, whatever. I mean, I've just recently got into the whole Zatoichi series,
Oh
and
yeah.
Criterion put out an amazing disc
Hmm.
with like all 30 movies or whatever, and it's, you pop one in and then it's another one and another one and another one, and they're so good. And it's like one of those things that they're from the early 60s to up to the 90s, and I had heard of it but had never seen it. And then when you see it, you're like, oh my god, this guy has so much charisma and so much and it's like, that's the amazing thing from a movie star or an act. This guy was an amazing star, and the chemistry and the bravada he had, it's just amazing. So when you find things like that, it just kind of gives you a whole new, you're like, oh, there's so much more out there for me to
Right.
be entertained or informed or educated on. That that's why cinema is so exciting, because there's so much to dive into and to to find, and that's really what I like. And when I can pepper little bits of things that have inspired me or whatever in these
Mhm.
films, like the pig mask is, you know, an homage to Motel Hell or
Yep.
whatever it might be. The songs, you know, are kind of a reference to Defiance with Jan Michael Vincent.
Mhm.
And, you know, there's certain things that to me, that's the whole point of making these things, is just kind of having the fun to kind of put in the things that have inspired me in them, and, you know, hopefully find a new audience for them and for whatever it might be.
I'm gonna say with your band though, you did disappoint me a little. You teased Sax Man from Lost Boys, and I didn't get Sax Man from Lost Boys. I'm gonna,
He didn't show up.
but but overall, folks, Pig Killer is one to watch if you like your slasher films, even if it is, you know, with it being based on true material. I think it adds that extra punch, but it doesn't need that. I think it stands on its own. And what's next for you, Chad? What's after Pig Killer?
I'm in pre-production right now for H.P. Lovecraft's Beyond the Wall of Sleep, with Eddie Furlong, Bai
Ooh.
Ling, Jake Busey, Ginger Lynn is back, Steve Rail's back, Robert Miano. The whole gang is, the band's back together, and we shoot in early December.
Well, that'll be exciting. I'll definitely be looking forward to that. And thank you for taking your time. This has been a lot of fun talking about this, talking about Pig Killer. And where can people keep up with your stuff? Do you have a website, socials?
Yeah, just go, you know, type in my name, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm on all that crap, and you can find me. And, you know, I'm always just tweeting about the film and trying to get the word out there. And if you dig it, please spread the word.